Jim Joyce.
Hey,
What?
hey, hey.
Happy Wednesday. And we chatted. We're so informal and we expect people to just know who we are right away. Eugene and co-host of the Shout of Digital Health Therapy. And
Yeah, very good. Jim Joyce joining Eugene here from sunny Morocco.
I was just gonna say, yeah,
Delighted to be here
amazing.
on a Wednesday, walking our guests through. I guess we have another amazing guest coming up.
Yes, and he just dropped off again. So let me hold on.
As you're teeing him up.
Yeah, as I teeing him up.
What's the housekeeping here? How many? So I was. How many episodes are we in now? You got the number? 60.
158, 159.
Okay, 159. That's great.
Yeah.
It's an important one.
All right. I see our guest back in. Yes, we're
Okay.
in. No, let Richard in.
Okay. Awesome.
Richard, I actually had to track back. Welcome, Richard. I always do the little quick intro of how either I met or Jim met our guest. And I had to look it up. Actually, Pete Antunes introduced us back in March of 22. Richard, you and I will be celebrating almost our 3-year anniversary of meeting. So there you
Is
go.
there a gift for year 3?
I was
I'm
going to
not sure.
ask you the same, maybe a watch or
Yeah.
something. But anyway, the gift is that you get to be on the Shout of Digital Health Therapy. So welcome.
Right. That's it.
That is a wonderful gift. It's the gift that keeps on giving for the next 45 to 60 minutes of our lives. So thank you for having me here.
Exactly. Exactly. Very good.
And Jim, Richard, Jim.
Pleasure to meet
Uh,
you.
Pleasure to meet you. Look forward to hearing about you.
The same.
So we got introduced a while back. We're an investor, but I don't want to put words into your mouth, and we have time. So why don't you take us back through your Richard Lungen's history? Who are you? Where you were born? What
When
what you're up to?
you say Lungen because I guess where I was born way back in the day, there were Lungens and Lungens. We're the Lungens. So
Okay. So I wasn't too
Ah,
much. I don't think I've ever called you Mr. Lungen or Lungen. So
no one called me Mister. If you want to call me Mister, I'll give you my father's cell phone number. I guess it's fair to say we became literally a real investor 3 years ago when we launched HC9. But maybe since you asked, I'll take you back to the beginning. Speaking of my father, I was supposed to be a lawyer. I figured my whole life I was destined to become a lawyer, except my father was the longest running prosecutor in the history of New York State. So all I
oh,
knew was the prosecution. So I guess the prosecutors are always right. The way I was raised at the kitchen table, the defense
right.
never had a chance. And the reason I say that, because it was part of my upbringing, is that I never realized that watching my father start a case, try the case, and end the case was literally the playbook on how I teach entrepreneurs how to sell. Because you get in front of a buyer, tell them what you're going to tell them, show them what you're going to tell them, and then at the end of the trial or meeting, remind them of what you told them. When I eventually realized that there was no way to become a prosecutor without running for office, which my father did 7 times, I found myself on the ground floor in 1992 after graduating college of what was called a TPA. Back in the 90s, if you all remember, our country was littered with many third-party administrators around America who were paying claims on self-funded employers. And if
Okay.
you also go back to 1992, 93, large employers, people don't realize this, but large employers paid their own claims. I remember walking into Walmart in 1995. It was a claim shop. And so we then built a PPO. So I cut my teeth in the early 90s by building a provider network. Now, as I think through here in 2025, all the sexiness of value-based care and risk and shared risk, it all comes down to the provider network. So we built a national PPO. I was always the head of sales and the guy banging on TPA and insurance company doors that aren't even open anymore. Names people don't even know were even in health insurance back in the mid 90s.
Right.
That business was eventually acquired by a large third-party administrator called Health Plan Services. HPS became the largest administrator of the ACA when it was passed. And somewhere along the way, as the story is told, 2006, because my former boss maybe will be listening to this, I hope I'm accurate. In 2006, we outgrew scale. We had brought on a large number of insurance companies who were outsourcing their ben admin to us at HPS. And as the executive vice president of sales, I had really nothing to go sell in 2007, and no one's going to put me in operations. So I had the choice to do something different. The choice to do something different turned out to be what's called Leverage Health Solutions. Leverage Health Solutions was founded by myself, but very shortly thereafter, luckily, my business partner, Charlie Falcone, joined us. And for the last 18 or so years, Leverage Health has been this unique business in healthcare that has been the business development partner for usually a younger and growing company in healthcare. Vendors, innovators, disruptors that typically are lacking either access, know-how, or anything in between. We've looked at 2,000 companies in our history.
Wow.
And of those 2,000 companies, we've worked with about 30 some odd businesses and distributed their products and services as if those companies had a national business development team to over 200 health plans across the country. So people would say that we positioned ourselves, the unique, again, position in healthcare, where on one side of our ecosystem are the portfolio companies that trust us with their business development in exchange for the equity we bought, earned, and revenue share. And on the other side are many health plans who trusted our decision-making and our ability to get in front of them. And then
And vet the products, right? As well.
yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Did you do this right out of high school?
No,
Did you go right into the acronyms, or did you grew up in Buffalo, right? Or
I grew up in a little town called Mountaindale, New York, in Sullivan County, 90 miles north of Manhattan, the Borscht Belt. I went to University of Buffalo.
okay,
Maybe with my haircut, I look a little younger, but I'm 50. And in 1992, I started in the workforce right away.
okay, and then you were thinking that you were going to follow your father's footsteps at that time. Was this
Yeah. What did you study?
something?
What did you
Yeah,
graduate with?
the Lungens, did they say you have to study a certain degree, or
I have a degree that is incredibly relevant to healthcare, political science. Like it means nothing compared in healthcare. But that was my degree with a little bit of pre-law. I don't even think I could spell healthcare. In fact, the gentleman that I went to work for out of college owned a small TPA and brokerage business. He had me go to community college in Buffalo to get my health and life license on the wheels. Wasn't exactly what a college guy wanted to do on Saturdays to get licensed for healthcare.
okay, but you
How
grew
did,
up. So go ahead.
go ahead, Jim. Go ahead.
No,
You're
please,
going
please go.
backwards still.
Yeah, you go, you go.
I love
No,
it.
I was trying to get a sense of the man. Okay, so I'm picturing this big. And Lungen is what, from your European name? You were talking about the Lungens versus. This is
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And so you're growing up like hardcore upstate New York, and were you in University Buffalo? You're obviously good in the cold. You're obviously good in the cold. Come out of school. You come from a big family, or you on your own, or
No,
yeah,
I have a brother who's in healthcare. He worked for Zealous.
yeah,
Small family, learned how to work hard, learned the appreciation of hard work and preparation, but
yeah,
somehow stumbled into healthcare.
the,
yeah.
the
Got it.
hustle. And so, how did you end up after college TPA? Was it just? I'm sure you weren't sitting around saying, "Hey, I want to work for a TPA."
So,
Like,
UG, since you asked, the TPA also had a life insurance unit, and I started in life insurance. And a gentleman said, "What's your favorite letter, A or Z?" So I said Z. He took the phone book, turned it upside down, and I started cold calling people in the phone book to sell them life insurance as a 22-year-old kid.
Oh, epic.
hold on. Let's double click on this, right? Because I
There
actually
it goes.
this is going to be fun.
Epic.
Let's double click on this. I actually remember in college, kind of one of my jobs was cold calling. It's asking for donations. And it was grueling job. Question for you, because I've heard it both ways. Fast forward to today. Does cold calling work today in sales?
I,
B2B sales, obviously. Just
I, I,
curious.
I think coming out of COVID, what I know about sales, which is a lot in healthcare, is it's dramatically about credibility and relationships. Now, can you cold call? Sure. But people have to be in the office to receive the phone call. And coming out of COVID, they're really not in the office all that much. So there needs to be alternative strategies, but I still do it. Usually, so I preach this all the time to entrepreneurs. Today, CVS announced their numbers, right? So there were executives, and I'm hoping the executives that we have relationships with, their phone doesn't ring with this tip. But CVS told the free world everything they needed to know today to understand
Yep.
CVS. If I'm a company in healthcare, I'm memorizing, I'm studying, I'm reading the analyst questions, I'm thinking through it. And then I'm writing letters or I'm picking up the phone and I'm calling those people who just announced everything you wanted to know about CVS this morning. The answer can be yes, if there's the right approach to it.
So
Yeah.
by the way, just
It's
a
so different.
little hint, and this is my daughter's thing case, just FYI. My wife would comment on it. I use
Yeah.
this app called Quarter, Quatr.
Hmm?
Amazing.
Okay.
It's Spotify for quarterly
Quarter
reports.
results.
I literally
Oh,
subscribe to
cool.
companies I follow and just
I'm
listen
gonna write
to it
that
as I
down.
walk. It's amazing. And to your point, Richard, it's anybody in the prospect list,
Yep.
whoever's public, it's just extracting and follow. Oh, great, whatever, right?
But and by the way, not just public.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Many Blues plans treat themselves like a public company and announce their earnings. Highmark, Guidewell,
yeah.
Right.
hospital system. So you don't have to be public. You just need to know how to do research and how to get after it.
But that's amazing. Like, it's funny. I was a stockbroker coming out of university doing cold calls. If you'll go back in the day, so we might have bumped into each other. But but
But it's interesting. I
the lessons.
find that kind of a lot of the younger generation, they're just used to being chat only. And
Right.
that culture of just picking up a call, everybody starts avoiding it. But back to Richard, I just wanted to double click on the cold calling stuff because to me, they're
Oh,
just
I love it.
fascinating
Yeah, but I
with
think
some
it's
of the
also
sales
it's
tactics.
an important like the idea if you're going to build a business and it sounds like you're professional. This that kind of people raised with that kind of basic disciplines of reaching out. How do I get my message across to you very quickly, sharply? How do I deal with possible rejection and steel yourself up for it? It's
It's
like it's a
important.
lost art.
So I have no idea if our kids, we have three boys all in school at the time right now. So I have to work hard because those tuition bills show up, right? So our oldest, it's not because we're hardcore parents, but our oldest did some interning work for a number of our companies. He's a senior at Indiana, but at the age of 13, he was cold calling hospitals on behalf of our provider analytics business, trying to get a CFO to take a meeting. And in the course of and he learned how to make the call, who to call, log the information. And his job was just to get one of us on the phone, almost like a boiler room, to your point,
Yeah.
Jim. Stockbroker. And
It's
he
the
got
dialing.
one meeting in 1 month. And that's all he needed. It's like the
Right.
18th hole in golf. One last shot gets you coming back.
Amazing.
Awesome. Okay, so then you came into that. We got you into TPN at this stage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then talk to us a little bit more on the PPO. What kind of was this a trigger because of what you saw in the TPAs and
If you think about today, the health plan's best asset or most important asset is their provider network. Back in the 90s, the contracts between networks and providers was like a percentage of bill charges. This bundles and value based, I think it was aspirational or just consultants whiteboarding ideas of the future. Um, so the PPO industry still exists. It's the network. It's not an industry anymore. Companies like Zealous and Multiplan took over all of that. And the BUCAs, the big health plans, they distribute their networks to TPAs and regional insurance companies. So United, not United as much, but Aetna and Cigna have substantial businesses where they're taking their proprietary networks and offering to other health plans and other payers with quite healthy margins and top line revenue. But the benefit of being on the ground floor of a network, no one would have ever predicted how much knowledge that would have earned myself and my business partner, who also was in the PPO business, thinking about the variety of companies we touch today and are investing in that are network based in one way, shape, or form.
And Rich, could you walk it through of these companies? So we cut you off and made you go back to your your roots, but so just talk through the kind of companies that you work with and you invest in, and maybe how that works.
Maybe I should then also explain when we started HC9 as well. So Leverage Health is an 18-year company co-owned by myself and my business partner, Charlie Falcone. And for years, we were directing our Leverage Health companies to strategic and financial sponsors where applicable on where those investors could be helpful. Along the way, we acquired a couple of companies from United Health Group, which was called Aperture at the time, the largest credentialing company in the country. We still maintain a sizable position in that business. It's majority owned by a large private equity firm. So the Leverage Health story taught us a lot, taught us how to operate, But the thing it taught us the most was how to pick companies and how to grow companies. And that we thought was a lacking ingredient with traditional VC. So we started HC9 Ventures. So 3 years ago, Charlie and I, along with some advisors who were giving us the thought of, hey, this is the right time. The venture capital market is mostly lacking with operator expertise and growth expertise. So we intentionally designed what we call an investor community in Fund One. So we started HC9. So I'm one of the two founders and general partners along with Charlie. We're also 7-figure LPs. So we put our money where our mouth is. And within 8 months, we raised over $80 million plus 2 SPVs, which took us over $100 million in a first time fund. But what makes us unique, Jim, to your question, who our investors are. Eugene, you and I have interacted for a while. I'm known to have a pretty large network in healthcare. Don't know how it happened, but it happened. We have 135 healthcare executives who contributed their own capital to become LPs in HC9. And we are pretty close to exhausting Fund One and pretty excited about the future with Fund Two. And so we launched HC9, and HC9 has been, from what people say, a pretty strong success because it leverages all those things that we learned at Leverage Health, how to operate, how to grow companies. And that commercialization mindset is what we bring to venture. That takes us to where we are today to complete the story, if that's helpful.
Very helpful. Awesome.
Maybe talk a little bit. So obviously you're healthcare executives, and we're lucky to have actually a few of those folks, I think, on our cap table as angels, including like John Ray and others. Great set of people. What's the overarching thesis, right? How do you guys make that decision with some of those executives? What do you focus on? And where I'm getting with this, it's also because you guys are in the front lines with your portfolio companies and very active. What are you seeing in this crazy market now? So twofold question: the thesis and what you seeing with your investment.
Yeah. So our thesis, or I guess when you're in venture capital, you have to use the word thematic at least once a day. So, so our thematic approach to investing is to date only to invest in companies where we collectively, we being my amazing team at HC9 and whatever subset of LPs are relevant to that certain subject where we can be helped. We are not passive capital, Eugene. So we're different. All 9 of our investments we've led, we've priced, we've syndicated with other helpful investors where applicable. We've built advisory boards made up of our LPs who were relevant and actionable for that particular subject. And all of those companies are companies where we feel that we can make a difference growing predominantly into the health plan, risk-bearing provider, employer markets, and all the tangential markets that those 3 verticals touch. We've really stayed away from med tech and life science and pharma. And even in our future funds, we probably will stay away from those sectors. It's just not our subject matter expertise. And the other question, how do we lean on this community we built? So of the close to 1,000 companies we reportedly have seen, if a company gets far down in the funnel, wherever that funnel might be at that moment, we're already curating which of our LPs we can reach out to and get them involved, whether it's clinical,
Yep.
technical, administrative in nature. By doing that, I think our odds of success, or maybe our odds of not failing, are pretty high because we've leaned on people who've done it, did it, operated it, and bought it in their current or former jobs. And the deal flow, we've been, knock on wood, has been non-competitive because of this ecosystem we've created.
Interesting. And would you so seed and you say seed and pre-seed, is that right? Or
It's, Jim, sometimes some of my smarter investor friends will have to explain to me what these things mean, but it's late C, early A, even a B. So
yeah.
we only invested in one pre-revenue company
Okay.
called Laguna, but with a lot of collective work, we've won some health plans now and they're off to the races, but that's
Got it.
age.
Yeah, so they're early, but they've got some fit and traction and motions going on. Yeah, is that kind of and what would be for the uninitiated that's not as expert as you are? What is that? What would be a sample? Maybe even a company that you invested in that you've been public about, or what type of company would fit the wheelhouse?
First of all, word expert in me, it's a little bit interesting. That's interpreted, but nonetheless, I'll give it a shot. So I think about our very first investment right here down the road in New York during COVID, company called Forge Health. It's an IOP and OP business. When we first met the team, we honestly, since this is a very candid podcast, I get the sense we didn't even have
No
our
BS
first
here.
close. We didn't have our first close. We had no money. So we had
Right.
no money, no commitments. I go down the street in White Plains, New York, meet the CEO. They had two going on three locations, $1 to $2 million in revenue. They were in network, I would say, with adequate rates in the business. Now let's fast forward to today. So today there are 18 locations, close to 20 million in revenue. We've been able to lend a strong hand in helping them secure better rates, more strategic relationships with all the payers in the PA, New York markets, New Jersey. In fact, Independence Blue Cross became an investor because of our relationship in the business. And if you look at the advisory board, it's made up of it's made up of 9 LPs. So the guys and gals that have run network at some of the largest health plans sit on this advisory board for some options to give advice because they're already LPs in HC9. And if you look at the board, I'm surrounded by amazing people. Dr. Alan Muni, Dr. Clive Fields, Dr. Elisa Bull, Paul Martino, Tim Wentworth used to be our chairman of the board. So you put that type of expertise along with capital, it's
Mm.
surrounding any company, and they should be able to work through all kinds of problems. I can give you another one if it's okay for a minute.
Yeah.
One of our most recent investments, so I made a joke on a podcast a couple of months ago that didn't go over very well with my family. All of our portfolio companies are important to us, but just like our three boys, they rank in some order, which I don't disclose to them.
We do that with our two girls. We never say which one is the favorite.
I thought you could say you do your podcast, Eugene, but so
We have too many episodes to start rating them, Richard. So
good for you. So we knew this company it was a capability called Circadian being extracted from a device business. But we knew the two founders very well. We knew some of the money people behind the business well. But when we invested in it, we knew we needed to build a board. We needed to find a CEO because one of the two founders, his name was on the door, but it wasn't going to be on the door forever. So we didn't
Right.
mind getting involved with a business that needed work, but we
Yep.
knew we had the guts of something that was going to be an important business with multi-virtual specialty care, sleep, trying to prevent heart and diabetes issues. But investing in a company without a CEO, that's daunting to a lot of folks.
Yeah.
We didn't mind because we knew we can run a process, find the right people. And now, a few months later, still a lot of work to do, but things
Yeah.
are really in shape. So that's
I
another
mean,
example.
there's always
Right.
work to do.
There's
Yeah.
always work. There's always work. And when you're finding that CEO, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're finding that CEO, what's your like? How much is gut? How much is process? What
We're not,
experience have
so
you
we're not
got?
majority owners. So therefore we can't just
Yeah.
play king all the time. Although somebody accused me of doing that once in a while, but so I think it has to fit the business, right? So it's a person that it's a small company, like all of our companies. So it's a little bit of grit, right? It's the old notion of if you see the trash, take it out. If you see a shovel, dig. So finding a certain person who isn't afraid of a small company, isn't afraid that he's not going to have an executive assistant anymore, like he or she might have had at a big health plan or a big hospital. So it's a little bit of gut, but we put these things through a real process because every year, just like other people, we stand in front of all of our LPs. We'll be doing this on March 30th and 31st in South Florida. So we have to stand in front of them and talk about the fund. And the last thing we want to do is not
Yeah.
have not a lot of depth behind any of our decisions. So it's definitely a part of gut and relationship at the beginning, but then you take someone through the process.
Awesome.
And what are you seeing? So you have a portfolio of 9 companies. I'm assuming most of them are somewhere selling into a health plan or employers, right? Is that the assumption? What are you seeing from a sales cycle perspective, from adoption, just some observations?
I could say that I don't know how your other podcasters or you guys feel, but there's never been a harder time to distribute services, product, what have you, into the payer and employer market. We're at a moment in time, and at least in my career, where there are so many competing priorities. Unless we were born yesterday, between Medicaid, Medicare, ACA, the new administration, it is, I like to unfortunately joke, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? Because it's not easy out there. So the sales cycles are incredibly long, but they're really not any longer than they were 5 years ago. The difference today, I think, and it's just me, I think we have a moment in time that the investors and the entrepreneurs who are representing company A or company B, they need to be incredibly well schooled before they pick up that phone or send that email, understand their target audience. Does that health plan or does that employer really need what you're throwing down at that moment? And if not, take that chip out of your pocket in 6 months. But the sales cycles are still 1 to 2 years. They're maybe if you have a good, credible network, which knock on wood, I think we do, maybe you get a little bit of a quicker entry into the room, but the sales cycles are long. And the other thing, Eugene, to your question, for obviously for anyone listening, is the sales cycles in healthcare are cyclical. There are certain movable objects in healthcare. January 1st, can't change it. It is what it is. Earnings
Right.
calls, open enrollment for Medicare and ACA. So those immovable objects and immovable timelines just create strategies that you have to be cognizant of when you're starting your go-to-market strategy. So it's a kind of a long-winded answer to your quick question, but long sales cycles and the buyers know what they need.
They're becoming
I,
more and
it's,
more sophisticated.
yeah,
Absolutely.
Interesting.
I think healthcare sales is a zero-sum game. If I'm a health plan, whether it's number two pencils, water coolers, or value-based care administration, I can only make one or two decisions a year for the most part. So
Right.
be aggressive and be at the front door.
And so it sounds like you're like the LPs and even yourself, like this managing the kind of the patience of the capital, managing, allowing, or are your LPs, you're the people invested in your fund, just schooled in the fact that, hey, listen, it's going to take us a year or 2 years. Is that pretty good? Or maybe give some sense of how do you manage that?
So there's a few things. It is going to take 1 or 2 years. Early stage companies should really think about some form of a development partner, whether it's a payer or an employer, someone that's willing to take a chance and prove out the model. You can cut the line a little bit if you do some actuarial work on the front end. Too many companies, Jim, think that their PowerPoint sells itself. And then all of a sudden you get into oh, I need data from you, Mr. Employer or Mrs. Health Plan. That in itself takes 6 months. So if you're willing
Right.
to do the work on the front end, you might impact the timeline a little bit shorter. And if a company surrounds itself with some real actionable advisors, investors, and management team who have relationships and credibility, then maybe your request for data moves up a little bit in the pecking order. It's
Yeah.
still a long sell. Right.
It's managing some of that bureaucracy, right? The processes just run themselves. Yeah, I still remember in a large organization, it was like literally, you know, if you print out the rules of the organization, probably will be like
And to a lot of our friends in the audience who hopefully are listening, the seats are changing at health plans and employers constantly.
constantly. Yep,
Right.
So
constantly. It's musical
keep your
chairs.
eye on that. It's musical chairs. It's a game show. For some reason, I'd be a pretty good contestant on that game show. Millions of chairs, but it's work and it's sitting in front of it.
And
Right.
once in a while, one of the chairs gets pulled out. Somebody just falls out, right? And all the time, I'm sure. But
Oh, all the time.
And it's something I probably just don't have a handle on, but when you think about the liquidity events for these companies that you invest in, is it, hey, you get this level of traction, and then there's the natural consolidators of these companies, or
So who am I to make a prediction? But I would think, the old line of dry powder, right? So I'll answer your question with a couple of thoughts. The strategics, there aren't many strategics today that are requiring a lot of capabilities at 100%. There, and if there are strategics, they're only going to probably buy one thing that does that one thing. So
yeah,
if you're in the CKD business or MSK business or behavioral health, I don't think a health plan or a hospital needs to buy two. So then you think about who your acquiring audience is, and everybody wants to sell their company to United Health, of course. But United doesn't need to buy everybody's company. It's not a rite of passage. And to my United friends out there, that was my way of trying to prevent people from calling you. So, and on the dry powder comment, there's definitely private equity sponsored businesses that aren't growing as fast organically and or have a amazing group of customers or logos where they have the ability to now cross sell. So those capabilities that they can acquire would be more actionable. So I think to your question, the early stage market right now should create a lot of opportunity with either some aspect of acquisitions to strategics and or these platform oriented sponsored companies that are going to need to acquire more capabilities to then bring to market. So it's a little bit of both to your question.
Great.
I, two more topics before we get to Jim's famous last question. So one, the employer market, right? I think US, to my knowledge, is the only country in the world that has, such a large percentage of coverage by the employer. Your thoughts there? Everybody keeps saying PEPM is dead and point solutions no more. I don't know how many of your companies are selling to large employers, but just your thoughts there.
They're selling to large employers either directly or indirectly.
Indirectly.
So if they're being sold through a health plan, the health plan is assimilating company A into a broader range of topics and they've created their own PEPM. And as some of our companies are, they do have a direct to employer strategy. So you bring up a couple of things. I don't think the PEPM market is dead, but I think it needs to be very sound before you can go to market. I think your PEPM, going to my quick point earlier, we've actually forced would be the wrong word, but strongly mandated that our companies, both at HC9 and at Leverage Health, need to incorporate an actuarial study, both to prove out their ROI, prove out their base price, and help on an ongoing basis. We even bring our actuary friends into quarterly JOCs with customers to help build credibility. So if you do those things on the front end, the PEPM market isn't dead, but boy, it's being scrutinized. That is a fact. You do bring up a point about global. We're on our way to Europe this weekend. Our middle guy is studying in London. Studying's the operative word. We'll see how that's going, but he's in London. So on Monday, I'm looking forward to running around London with some folks and further learning about their healthcare market. But it is fascinating to me, Eugene, when I think about the fact that we've been involved in two Israeli businesses. One years ago, it was called BookMD. Now it's called Vim. And one of our proud investments at HC9 is called Laguna. But in Israel, the number of companies that are being created, as we all know, they're being built and organized for the most part. I think things have changed, but years ago, it was a little disappointing that so many companies were being created around an Israeli healthcare system that has almost zero applicability to the United States. Like Blue Cross Blue Shields, PPO, ACA, Medicaid, Medicare. It has nothing to do with any other country in the world. And it's hard to learn, Jim and Eugene. I don't think you can just get on a plane or get on a boat and land in New York or somewhere here and say, I'm here. It's tough to figure this stuff out.
Listen, we've also seen on this side, just because somebody is in Netherlands, even going over to expanding into Belgium presents
Right.
challenges because the systems are ultimately different. The ICD codes are different. There's tons of stuff. So the applicability, and so many European companies want to enter the US, right? Unless you have somebody like a Jim Joyce that knows the US market driving that, or,
It's so hard.
it's just all
It's
right.
so
One
hard. I
one
mean,
more before we drop off. We've obviously seen, just as a digital health, the investments kind of started going down. I think that really went through not just digital health, honestly, just the whole investment market. What are you seeing now from your LPs? But also, I'm hearing the rise of the secondaries, just because I think there's a lot of opportunities for people to come in, clean cap tables and other things. So just curious what you've seen.
We haven't been involved in the secondary market yet directly, but it's definitely hit our desk. That there's no question that is an absolute conversation happening there. We all know there's a number of companies that many, who knows what the actual number is. So I hate to be vague, but it is an absolute number of companies that have been priced, not grown, and now what? So there appears to be a very strong market for what you just raised. Digital health generally, yeah, I'm probably a little bit, I'm not a conservative guy, but on the rise of digital health, it goes back to something that I think about all the time. There just aren't enough buyers for all those companies that were created. See, so many companies were created by either VCs, entrepreneurs, accelerators, and we're part of the problem. Between Leverage Health and HC9, we have 17 to 18 companies, plus others we advise through relationships. There's just too many products and services floating around for a finite number of employers, a finite number of health plans, a finite number of risk bearing providers. So it's, I don't get it. I don't know how all these businesses can grow commercially when there just, again, aren't enough outlets for people to sign contracts and pay invoices. I think about that all the time, Eugene and Jim. And
And interestingly, it's still human labor involved. I know we're not even going to talk about AI today, right? Just because it's just like you said, thematic is the key word. AI seems to be. So at the end of the day, healthcare is still human in the loop, right?
Mhm.
And there's just not enough professionals. And so it doesn't matter what front ends you spin up or what networks you spin up, there's just not enough professionals.
we have a
Covered.
massive force problem in US
Yep.
health, and it's not coming back. In fact, on the AI side, so I have to use that every day too in healthcare and venture. There are health plans creating AI work groups and AI protocols. So just because you've got an AI thing and you want to get a Blue Cross plan, there are now protocols and procedures to prevent all. Again, unless you were born yesterday, a lot of the prior oath conversations, and so that also isn't easy. And the workforce is hard to be rebuilt again, coming out of COVID. It is challenging. Our father is unfortunately in the hospital in and out with cancer. And even a facility as great as Sloan Kettering, on any
Yep.
given day, there's a nurse shortage.
Yep.
Like, wouldn't you think they have that figured out? But
Mm,
they don't.
mm.
Yep. Sorry to hear to hear
Sure.
that, but glad
Thank you.
you're in a great institution.
Cancer picked on the wrong guy. He's gonna be okay.
He's gonna beat it.
But it's healthcare's hard. I say it all the time. Healthcare is hard. You've had a lot of great people on your podcast. I've listened to a whole number of them. They're absolute legends in the industry. Doesn't matter who you are. This is a tough industry, but it's fun. The relationships that we've all built make it a lot of fun to try to solve problems.
Absolutely.
Mm.
With that, Jim, I'm going to pass it to you to your last famous question here.
Okay. Okay. So Rich, we're gonna we're gonna go forward to go backwards here. So we're 2 years out. You're planning and organizing your big LP annual report of all the unbelievable investments. You're delighted. You're gone from 9 investments to 25 exits happening left and right. And you get this invitation. You get this invitation from the University of Buffalo that you have to jump on a flight and get back there. And the invitation is to speak at the Venture Capital Thematic of Health Plan Investing Conference. And it's called Healthcare is Hard is the name of the conference, is the name of it. So you're going to keynote at this conference and you're there and you're excited. So you invite along some of your portfolio companies to see you at this event and you're up on stage and you're describing the process, the prosecutor's process of bringing a healthcare company from 0 to 100 miles per hour, how you access things. And people are just delighted. There's this one well-dressed, diligent note taker in the back of the room that just listening to every word that you say. And you step off the stage and he comes running towards you and he says, Rich, you don't understand. I'm from the same bloodline. We're not Lungens, but we came from the same air. And I've been following your career. I started off selling, then I worked diligently through the healthcare system in all different types of ways. And my father was a famous attorney. And I'm about to start my new company that's going to be pursuing my new digital healthcare company that's getting traction in health plans. What's the one piece of advice you'd give that younger version of yourself?
Right, so first of all, I like your optimism on where I'm going to be in 2 years. So thank you. You made my day. Great. I look forward to telling my business partner about your prediction on us in 2 years. So my advice to that note taker in the room in Buffalo, New York, I highly doubt Buffalo's calling me, by the way, but nonetheless, I would say to that person who is thinking about getting into healthcare, I would give him or her a couple of quick thoughts. One, are you ready for this? Because it's a slog. in healthcare. Number one. Number two, research, study, and then keep researching and keep studying. Going back to my point a few minutes ago about the quarterly earnings, publicly available data, healthcare is incredibly hard, but it tells you everything you need to know through mutual insurance companies and publicly traded companies. I would very much encourage that person, which I've done, by the way, when I've been asked to speak to entrepreneurs. I would say, take advantage of every bit of information that's made available to you and then some to make sure you clearly understand your target audience for your product. If you don't understand your target audience, you really are going to have a hard run. Understand the target audience and do whatever it takes to learn about that part of healthcare because you're the guy on the front lines talking about your product. That would be the advice I'd give that person walking to the stage.
Love it.
Awesome. Awesome.
Richard,
Thank you.
thank you for joining us today. And for all
Thank you
our
for having me.
viewers and listeners, hit subscribe, pass it on, and see you next week.
Thank you.